Psalm 24 describes the celebratory procession of Israel's Messiah arriving in Jerusalem as the King of Glory, who is worthy to ascend the hill of the Lord, and sharing his authority with that surviving generation. Interestingly, about Psalm 24, it pairs kind of nicely with Psalm 68, which we looked at last week. I would love to just cover all these Psalms in one session, but that would be like a 6-hour session, so let's not do that. Anyway, I'll just give you that reference to Psalm 68 that you can look at separately. We covered that one last week as well. So we're going to continue to expound on that, explore that a little bit more. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false, and does not swear deceitfully. Now, generally, especially in current day, a lot of teachers who are teaching on Psalm 24 reference this as just being a virtuous person, having personal morals and virtues that are based on biblical values that apply to all of us. And that's true, but David is actually describing the Messiah. The Messiah is the ultimate demonstrator and fulfiller of these qualifications, where he's really describing, from a New Testament perspective, he's describing Jesus. In David's day, he's describing the Messiah. He's saying, who is the one who's worthy to ascend the hill? The hill is not just theoretical heaven or some symbolic place, but it is the mountain of the Lord. It's Jerusalem. It's to take the seat of authority in Jerusalem. Who's worthy to ascend the hill? From David's perspective, really is talking about Mount Zion. Who is worthy to stand before him in his holy place to take that seat of authority? It's he who has clean hands and a pure heart. He's saying the Messiah is going to meet these qualifications. He is the ultimate one with clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to what is false or sworn deceitfully. The Messiah is the ultimate fulfillment of verses 3, 4, and 5. Now, while the Messianic King is found worthy to ascend the hill of the Lord and receive authority to offer, the offer to ascend the hill of the Lord and receive shared authority also extends to that surviving generation. Such is the generation of those who seek after him. Now, as Israel's Messianic King begins his rule, he sets some essential qualifications for entry into his capital. These get referenced a lot more even in later prophets, but David starts to reference them here. People who are entering into the renewed capital are walked through some ceremonial cleansing of the heart and covenant renewal as an orientation as the new Messianic age is inaugurated. So truly, you can't enter. You can't even enter unless you have clean hands and a pure heart. And that gets referenced more by later prophets as a very physical, real, political, practical, tangible kingdom is established with a real Messianic king on a real Messianic throne. There's actual guidelines and qualifications for entry into that city, that capital city. And David's referencing some of those here. Interestingly, I didn't touch on verse 5 enough. He will receive blessing from the Lord in righteousness from the God of his salvation. That righteousness also often translated as he will receive vindication, or almost like biblical authority, or let's say like a authoritative title, or almost like an access badge. That's kind of a really crude way to describe it. But he's literally given authority. He's given vindication from heaven, declaring that this is the one who has authority. And so he receives blessing from God and authority from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him. And what's awesome is there's a generation that accompany him who are inheritors of that blessing as well. I love that. It's super cool. Let me check my notes real quick, make sure I'm not skipping anything big. Oh yeah, I do want to mention who does not swear deceitfully. What is swearing deceitfully really about? That's in verse 4. I just want to touch on that because David warned in Psalm 50. Moses warned even well before that in Psalm 29 and 31. that there are huge warnings for those who swear allegiance to the covenant wrongly. Swearing allegiance to God's covenant wrongly results in huge problems. And Moses even says those people, even especially on that day, on that final day of deliverance, if you take the covenant wrongly, you inherit a land of perpetual desolation. You inherit the opposite of covenant blessings, but you inherit covenant consequences. And so not swearing deceitfully actually refers to the loyalty and allegiance to God's covenant. And it's the Messiah who ultimately is the one who can fulfill the requirements of the covenant. And so that's why he's the one. He's the guy. This Messiah is the one who fulfills the covenant perfectly and can inherit a period of covenantal blessing that will be perfect. So there we go. I wanted to mention that because that part of swearing deceitfully is actually more than just giving false testimony, but it is related to taking God's name in vain, related to swearing allegiance, but hypocritically, and doing that with wrong motives or a wrong heart. Oh, I didn't pull up verse 5 enough for you guys there. There you go. He will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness, which also translates as vindication and authority from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him. So it's not just the Messiah, but it's that generation who's with him too. I love that. Then, of course, David has to break out into a psalm of praise. Oh, I do want to mention too, being the generation who seeks God's face. Boop, boop, boop. There it is. Verse 6, the generation who seeks God's face refers to our desire to know God better, sure, and receive his favor, sure, but there's more than that. Seeking God's face demonstrates where we set our hope, meaning we are setting our hope. Seeking his face means we're putting our trust in God and orienting our life to his desires. To be a generation that seeks his face is not just a hypothetical assent of, yeah, we want God's favor, but it's that we're actually orienting our lives to live in agreement with that favor, to inherit it, to live in agreement and orient it around God's desires. The crucified life of Jesus actually demonstrates living a life that seeks God's face perfectly. When Jesus demonstrated this, he didn't demonstrate it just as inheriting a kingdom and taking dominion, but the way that he inherited it was through the crucified life. Seeking God's face was really about surrender and allegiance, and humility was the way that was inherited. So we get more into that more in later weeks, but anyway, I mentioned that there just to give a little bit of context to the phrase, seeking God's face. Okay, there we go. So David breaks out this whole celebration process at the temple, where literally it's this declaration of David saying, lift up the gates. Like literally the old city and Temple Mount gates have to be unsealed and cleared of all debris. Like there's a physical entry that has to happen where David is saying, lift up your heads, O gates. Be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Now, I'm sure there's all kind of figurative applications and interpretations of this, but there is a literal day where the gates will be opened and the Messiah will enter. Oh, it's awesome. Who is the King of glory? Who is the Messianic King? This is just mind-blowing. David says it is Yahweh, the Lord. I mean, the text is Yahweh. It's not just my Lord in terms of my Savior, but the Lord, the one who we worship. He is the one. He is the Messianic King. I think this link that David is making is a very profound statement to say, who is the Messianic King? He is Yahweh. What? Understand, that still is highly disagreed with in just most Jewish settings today, but this is their king, David, who's declaring this. And of course, the New Testament would make strong arguments about the identity of who that is. And we'll get to those. We'll get to those arguments for sure. But who is the King of glory? Yahweh, strong and mighty, mighty in battle. Oh my goodness. We've talked about, again, his might in battle, but who's the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. Now, the Lord of hosts is a very specific title. David is saying this messianic figure is the Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Oh, there you go. David gives it a pretty open and shut case about the identity of the Messiah here in Psalm 24. Now, you can argue other interpretations, and I'm sure people do, but in terms of what's going to be the most biblically harmonious, especially even with later Hebrew prophets, anyway, there you have it. Let's see if there's anything else I'm missing in the notes before we move on out of chapter 24. I love chapter 24 because there's so much hope. There's so much celebration. There's awesome, awesome stuff that David's talking about there. Oh, I love it. Psalm 45 is another kind of good reference to the might in battle, the battle might of the Messianic king, where David prays, gird your sword and ride victoriously. And there's all this great language about how mighty in battle the Messiah is. So Psalm 45 is another great reference that we looked at last week. And this is the period. This is the moment where verses 1 and 2 are not just theoretically true, but they become literal, that the earth, the king of Israel, inherits the nations. Like what we talked about in Psalm 2 and in Psalm 110. There is a moment when that king arrives, the gates are lifted, and he enters into Jerusalem, that truly the fullness of the earth belongs to the Lord. And it becomes a practical reality, not just a theoretical, platitude that people talk about. So, all right.